All right, good evening, everyone. And we are, again, as you can see, because streaming software companies want to keep changing things up, we've gone to a totally different route again. Hopefully, this is primarily web based. Hopefully, this one holds up a little better as we do our thing here. And so, without any further ado, before I go off on a tangent on streaming software, let's start the recording, and then we shall proceed with the Liberty Talk. All right, we are back for another rock and roll edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. We got a lot of stuff to go into tonight. And we're going to start, as we usually do, on the Missouri side of things, and then we'll go into national news and all the stupidity that goes along with it. So first of all, let me do a little fancy dancy thing here. Let me change that one. Yes. So let me get this up. I'm still figuring this out a little bit, folks. So give me. So the Kansas City Chiefs are complaining after getting massive handouts from Missouri taxpayers. Let me get the right page here. The Hunt family, owners of the Kansas City Chiefs organization, is one of the wealthiest collection of people anywhere on earth. Forbes estimates their net worth at roughly $25 billion. And given how these things are usually calculated, that's almost assuredly far below the real number. This sounds like a lefty type of paper, but we'll go on here. You'd think then that if they wanted to pay for improvements to their franchise's stadium in order to raise ticket prices, build more expensive corporate suites, and make themselves even richer, they'd be able to afford it themselves, you'd think. Instead, the Hunt family is engaged in a years-long campaign demanding taxpayers fund construction for them, a state with an average household income of $68,000 paying for stadium construction for a family worth $25 billion. Makes sense. And this week, it seems like the Chiefs might have finally gotten their way, and they're still acting ungrateful about it. The Missouri legislature passed the Show Me Sports Investment Act, which is expected to be signed by Governor Mike Kehoe. The new legislation provides funding for both the Chiefs and Kansas City Royals to improve their stadiums, with the state funding up to 50% of new construction. In response, the Chiefs issued a statement expressing their disappointment that the situation hasn't been handled sufficiently to their liking. We are grateful to Governor Mike Kehoe and the Missouri legislature for taking this significant step forward, the Chiefs statement reads. The passing of this legislation is an important piece of the overall effort. While there's still work to be done, this legislation enables the Chiefs to continue exploring potential options to consider remaining in Missouri. Exploring potential options. Consider remaining in Missouri. This isn't a commitment to accept free money and stay in Missouri. It's more gamesmanship. Up to 50% of their construction costs funded by taxpayers, and it's still not enough for a family worth $25 billion. Unbelievable. I'll stop right there for the moment. Because what else? Listen, I want to hit on one thing before we talk about this in detail a little bit. When people say, okay, so let's say the Hunt family is worth 25, they're like, when they say they're worth 25 billion, they make it seem as though they have $25 billion lying around. When they're like, oh, they're worth 25 billion, people automatically jump to, well, they just got $25 billion lying about the place. So they can just write a check and cover the cost of renovations or building a new stadium. Yes, they're worth 25 billion. That's in assets, stocks, bonds, options, real estate, all their capital holdings. That's where their value is. Now, I'm not saying that these people should have taxpayer funds funding their stadium. I just want to clear that up because that's a lefty thing. They're like, well, they have $25 billion. They have $25 billion worth of value, but it's not like the Monopoly guy and he's holding giant bags with the dollar symbol on the outside and he's just carrying $25 billion around. In Kansas City, that's a good way to get hurt and robbed. I just wanted to put that out there before we went any further. Brandon, what's your thoughts on this absolute stupidity?
Outkick is actually more conservative.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they are conservative. But I do agree with your point that people like assume that like this conversation gets brought up when you talk about wealth taxes. When they want to tax like Elon Musk, he's like, no one should have that billions of dollars. And you're right. These people are not sitting on billions of dollars worth of cash. It's all their assets and their businesses valuation. That's what their net worth comes to. So yeah, your point's right about that. But I will say that Outkick is tends to be a more conservative network. But to the point on the Kansas City Chiefs stadium, it's kind of like what I was saying, the joke I was making last week, as I was like, yeah, these billionaires, they need more of our money, John, more of our money to fund these stadiums. And you keep going in that article a little bit, it says that Kansas, their house, approved up to 70%. So if the Royals or the Chiefs wanted to build in Kansas instead of Missouri, they're willing to fund 70% of that project. So that's even higher than, and that doesn't include local property taxes or anything else like that that might be included. And I do think it's interesting, like he said, they're like, yeah, it was nice in Missouri to do that. I guess it makes it easier to keep our options open. Would be terrible if you guys gave us more free money. Yeah, I mean, it's just big business, big handouts. I mean, it hurts everyone else in the entertainment industry. Like it hurts everyone else who, like anybody else, like anybody who goes to a Chiefs game instead of going to like a bowling alley or a movie, it affects those industries too. So it's not like a net, oh, well, all that Chiefs money came in. It's like you're also taking it from other parts of the city. But I brought that up last time we talked about this. Yeah. I just think it's funny. Yeah, we could give them 50% to build to a private business to do private business things, and it's still not enough. They're still wanting more.
Yeah, it's really dumb. But it doesn't surprise me. Again, these teams and these owners have had their way with taxpayers across this nation for years, and now they want to, they're going to take full advantage of it, and so they're going to play the system. And here's the thing, folks. Republicans don't like it when you accuse them of only caring about the rich, right? That's the left they love to say the Republicans only care about the wealthy. Well, if you're looking at it from let's say a more centrist position, let's say, if you looked at this situation right now and saw that everyone's getting their property tax valuations or their property valuations are going to go up, but the Hunt family is going to get a break they're going to get tax credits. And you're like, yeah, okay. Well, from an outsider's perspective, it's not hard to look at Republicans in Missouri and say they seem to care a lot more about these wealthy team owners than they do the people who they're really supposed to be representing, which is you and I. So it's not hard to jump to that conclusion. While it may not necessarily be always true, in this situation, it sure looks like Republicans care more about the wealthy than they do people, lower or middle income class people. They don't, that doesn't seem to be on their radar for the most part, but the Republicans will beat themselves, and Democrats do the same thing. Both parties will beat themselves. They will say they're not the way that the other party paints them, and then they turn around and act exactly like what as the other party paints them. So they can't help themselves. They'll trip all over themselves to paint themselves in a different light, but then they'll turn around and kind of act like what the other guys say they're acting like. It's like, Jesus, none of you guys have figured out that maybe, just maybe, you should actually pay attention to what people want. And apparently that's too hard. Brandon, anything else before I've got this video from Bryant Wolfen on the House floor on this SB3, which was the tax credits. And then apparently, there was a 5% cap, or 5% increase cap that was added on by Joe Nicola. And then there was a severability clause in there, which isn't in the Constitution, and everybody's all up in arms. But anything else before I play this, some of this Bryant Wolfen speech from the floor the other day?
No, go ahead.
Okay, let me change the old screen here. All right. I think everyone's going to really like this. Mr. Wolfen just knocking out of the park like he always does.
But really, since I've been paying attention to Missouri politics, which has been for a long time, what's even crazier is that, honestly, it's been kind of rushed through this extraordinary session under pretty decent pressure from the powers above, with very little data, zero accountability, and pretty much all for the benefit of a couple $1 billion franchises. So for me, the way I look at this, I come from a Jeffersonian view of government, that the proper role of the state is to protect individual liberty and private property, and that's it. That we exist here to restrain power, not redistribute wealth. That public money should never be handed out to private interests, especially not the ones who are already very well off. You know, it's unfortunate because this bill violates every principle that I came here to defend. It's clearly not conservative. It's definitely not constitutional. It's absolutely not limited government. And quite frankly, it's sure the heck not Republican. My party, the supermajority in this chamber, claims to stand for fiscal responsibility and the free market. Yet, here we are, going to pass a 30-year subsidy bill for billionaires. That sure doesn't look like capitalism to me. It's corporate welfare dressed up as economic development. But I want to be real honest here, because really the egregiousness of the policy, I don't know if it really matters compared to the surrounding circumstances. The bill exists for one reason, and one reason only, that leadership in this state doesn't want to be remembered as the ones who lost the Chiefs. That's it. That's what this is really about. Not sound economics, not constitutional authority, not what's in the best interest of Missouri taxpayers, just political optics and fear. We are literally being asked to spend hundreds of millions, if not billions, but probably hundreds of millions of dollars because the people in charge here in Missouri are afraid of a bad headline. I would ask our leadership, specifically our governor, is preserving your legacy more important than preserving liberty? So now that I've shed some light on what I think is really going on, I want to talk about the Constitution. It's what I'm known for, right? Throughout this session, I've tried to be consistent, even when it's not easy. I've evaluated every bill through the same lens. Is it constitutional? Does it expand the size of government? Does it respect the rights of the people of Missouri? That's my standard for every bill. That's why I vote no a lot. So, I've spoken up many times against bills that I feel like have violated these principles. Senate Bill 3 doesn't just violate these, it steamrolls right over the top of it. So I'm going to walk through it because to me, the policy debate, once again, doesn't matter as much as whether or not we are willing to follow the Constitution that we all swore an oath to uphold. Article 1, Section 1 of the Missouri State Constitution says that all political power is vested in the people, that government is instituted solely for the good, for their good, not the good for a select few companies, billion-dollar franchises, what have you. Article 1, Section 2 further reinforces that. It promises equal rights, equal benefits of the laws, and a government that's open and accountable. As I stated the first time when we heard this bill in regular session, I heard it was amendment then, that there is nothing equal or accountable about carving out multi-million-dollar tax credits and 30-year funding deals for 2 specific stadiums, while Missouri's small businesses and working families get a tiny little property tax freeze or cap. And it's crazy because it's not even all Missourians. And then there's Article 3, Section 38A, that says very clearly that the General Assembly has no power to grant public money or credit to private entities. Yet that's exactly what this bill does. Whether it's in the form of refundable tax credits or direct appropriations, we are literally handing out public money to private sports teams that, by the way, already make massive profits. We've stated that multiple times. But also, let's not forget Article 3, Section 40, subsection 30, which bars the General Assembly from enacting special laws when a general law can be made applicable, especially in this instance when it involves giving public money and credit to private corporations. So, once again, that's exactly what this bill does. This isn't a broadly applicable economic policy. It's literally a tailor-made package of subsidies and tax credits designed specifically for 3 professional sports teams. It creates a carve-out for a privileged few rather than applying a general rule for the public good. This kind of special legislation is precisely why this section, Article 3, Section 4030, was written what it was written to prevent. When we write laws for specific corporations instead of the general welfare, we violate both the spirit of the Constitution, but also, even worse, we send a message that says the Chiefs, the Royals, and the Cardinals deserve more than every other American, or Missourian, excuse me. And now, with all the other additional provisions rolled in this bill from the Senate, we also have another constitutional issue, which is Article 3, Section 23, aka my best friend, the single subject rule. It states that no bill shall contain more than one subject, which shall clearly be expressed in its title. But this bill isn't just about the stadium funding anymore. It's about property tax caps, disaster credits, amateur sports reimbursements, refundable income tax procedures, and some more on top of that. That does not sound very single subject to me. That is clearly a shopping cart full of unrelated items. But of course, who are we kidding? We've constantly passed legislation violating that principle all year long already, so I guess we could just continue to ignore that anyways. But I will step down from the constitutional soapbox for a moment, and I'm going to talk about the process that surrounded this bill. Mr. Speaker, if the content and the constitutionality of this bill weren't bad enough, then I think the process behind it should probably have every member of this body concerned. Senate Bill 3 is a taxation bill, or at least that's what the title claims to be. It creates a new tax credit, modifies existing ones, and commits Missouri taxpayers to long-term financial obligations. So I ask, why didn't this bill go through Ways and Means or the Special Committee on Tax Reform? You know, the committees that are literally designed and specifically designed to tackle tax policy. Why in the world was it routed through economic development? Well, obviously the answer is obvious, because if you go back and look, many of those members on the tax committees actually voted no on this stadium package that we voted on in regular session. So we knew that it would face opposition that we didn't want to see, so we sent it to where we could better control the outcome. That's not transparency. It's certainly not good government. And quite frankly, I think that's manipulation to the point to where it's kind of shady. But before that, I'm going to roll back the pages a little bit. The Senate, it added a completely unrelated provision, which is the property tax freeze, to gain support for this bill. So I would have you ask yourself, what does that have to do with billion-dollar stadium subsidies? Well, absolutely nothing. Clearly, it was added to soften the optics, to say, hey, we're not just handing out tax breaks to the billionaires, we're helping the homeowners too. But let me remind you once again that's not all Missourians, because there's several counties that were carved out of that freeze. But why? Why? Why not apply it evenly? Probably because they didn't need the votes of those senators. But I digress. But to top it all off, this bill also includes the severability clause. To me, this clause is funny because it's an admission. We're admitting something, that we are acknowledging that everyone knows the parts of this bill are probably not going to hold up in court. And that's why that severability clause is there. So let me be clear, if you're voting for this because of the property tax freeze and that gets struck down, but the stadium subsidies survive, then everyone who voted for this thinking that they were helping their constituents, well, you've been fooled, my friends. So you'll go back to your districts empty-handed while billionaire franchises walk away with 30-year tax breaks, which I think is just terrible policy. So once again, I think we should ask ourselves, should we be passing questionably legal bills, multi-subjected, and just hope that the courts clean it up for us? Well, obviously, I would say no to that. Our job is to write constitutional, accountable, and transparent laws, good laws. And quite frankly, if this is the only way to make this bill pass, by log rolling and attaching, log rolling other provisions in it and attaching a severability clause and just hoping for the best, well, then I would hope that that bill would not pass this body. So what we're doing here today with Senate Bill 3 isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. Because it tells the people of Missouri that the Constitution only matters when it's convenient, that principles are optional, and that the rule of law can be bent to avoid that bad headline. So I want to say this again, I've preached this all year, that the proper role of government is to protect liberty, not to rig the economy in favor of the well-connected and the well-off. But this bill does exactly that. It doesn't offer broad tax relief to hardworking Missourians. It offers the sweetheart deal to the team owners, wrapped in the language of economic development, because they have the political clout and the capital to demand it. So if you're a small business struggling with rising costs, the state says, nah, you'll be fine. But if you're the billion-dollar franchises in this state threatening to leave town, well, suddenly that checkbook opens wide open. That's not capitalism. Might I remind you, that is cronyism. The government picking winners and losers using Missourians' money. And it's happening all under the watch of a legislature that claims to be for limited government and a free market. But I'll change things a bit as I'm getting ready to close. You know, it's funny. The public was told that this extraordinary session was about disaster relief, about helping families devastated by the storms. That was the official line of the press release. That was the top priority coming in. But we all know that was a cover. We in this body do, because we knew since the day the Senate adjourned 2 days early during regular session that we were coming back here. We've all said it. We all knew it. We just didn't know when. So we actually all know the actual first priority. The real mission and the reason why we're here was to lock in this stadium deal. You know, as I said earlier, we didn't want to be remembered as the ones who lost the Chiefs. So instead, we choose to lose sight of the Constitution and, quite frankly, look over at your average everyday Missourians. We used the crisis to help ease the pushback for this handout. And if that doesn't concern you, then I'm not sure what will. This bill is unconstitutional, it's fiscally reckless, it's morally wrong, and worst of all, it sets the precedent that government serves corporations instead of the very people that it derives its power from. That is not conservative. That is not Republican. And it's certainly not the American idea of limited government. I know I didn't come here to protect the status quo. I came here to be a champion for liberty, and I will continue to do that. I'm going to uphold the Constitution, and I want to remind this chamber that of what we're supposed to be doing, which is restraining government, not expanding it. So clearly, I'm voting no on Senate Bill 3. I would strongly encourage those who still believe in limited government, sound fiscal policy, and the sovereignty of the people to please join me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, so there's Mr. Wolfen, and I don't think that we can do any better than what Bryant just did right there. I don't think either one of us could say that any better than what he did. And the worst part is, it's for those of you watching the live stream, or if you come back and watch the live stream later, you watch the people in the background. What are they doing? Looking at their phone, rocking back in their chair, clearly not listening to a freaking word that guy says. And that, to me, is the worst. It's bad enough that they're doing what they're doing. Excuse me. But then when someone is laying out a perfectly good case why they should not vote for a piece of legislation that horrible, what do? It's the same thing when Mike Moon stands up in the Senate. Rolling her eyes. Oh God, here we go again with the Constitution and conservatism and limited government and lower taxes. Oh, these guys should just shut their pie holes so I can go home and talk to my lobbyist buddies. They 90% of them look annoyed that someone would have the audacity to stand up in that chamber and call them all out on their BS. And it's like, well, I don't know why you're all annoyed, because clearly your constituents don't care either, because they keep putting you into office, so they're uneducated. It's like their egos. Their egos have to be constantly stroked. How dare you call them out for doing a horrible job on the floor in front of their friends? And again, folks, we have a horrible habit of voting for people into offices in rural counties across Missouri because they're Republican. Your Honor, I give you Exhibit A, why you shouldn't vote for probably 98% of those people, because they just showed their true colors. They put the Chiefs and the Royals and the Cardinals ahead of you. And I would strongly suggest that when it's time for their reelection, you give them the boot. Because if not, I do not want to hear another word of complaint about how taxes are going up and the cost of everything. All this stuff's happening. Why? And then you try to blame it on the Democrats who haven't held the majority for years. No, now it's on your head. Now it's on you, and you have to live with it. And I don't want to hear the crying and the complaining and the whining, because I'm going to look at you and go, you kind of did this. You kind of helped perpetuate this by ignoring the very truth in front of your face. And I don't want to be a total douche canoe here, but we can't just blame this on all the politicians and then just lay all the blame there and ignore all the other realities surrounding what's going on right now. We cannot do, we can. And things will not improve at all. So that's my 2 cents on that.
No, again, shout out to Bryant for his ability, like not his ability, but like his willingness to just tell the truth. Like what he said should actually have. So when he says that they used the tornado relief as a guise for the special session, and he's like, we knew that when the Senate adjourned 2 days early, that we were going to be back because we didn't get the stadium funding done. He said, we knew, like everyone in this chamber knew, we were coming back, but they claimed that it was for the tornado relief. That alone in itself should be like a wake-up call to some people. Like, wait a minute, that makes sense. Yeah, that's right. And you shouldn't be like most Republicans wouldn't be willing to say that. Like, well, we came back, we just tackled it because it was part of a big thing. And, I also liked his quote, which is it's corporate welfare dressed up as economic development, because I've touched on that a few times. I touched on that a second ago, that it doesn't actually develop things economically. It is just helping the big corporations that get the tax rebates and refunds and credits and all that. So yeah. And like you said, we talk about this all the time on the show, is that you can't just blame the politicians. You have to blame the people who put them into office. We all have to take a look at ourselves and go, did we do enough? Did we fight to preserve liberty for ourselves? And if you don't think you're fighting hard enough, then go out and do more.
I will add to that what Bryant was saying about, they said, oh, this is for storm damage relief. And then we came in and did, tax credits and stadium funding for wealthy team owners. People, again, I don't want to, I'm not giving you any leeway here. You should be used by now. You should be totally used to the government distracting you with feel-good-isms, and while they're holding up the shiny object, they're stabbing you in the back. You should be used to this by now. This is normal behavior from most politicians. They're gonna come out, they're gonna distract you with something that you think is a good thing, but tucked underneath 30 layers deep is a bunch of cronyism. You should be used to that by now too. If that bill if they wanted to do this constitutionally, there would be no tax credits or funding for sports teams. But let's say they wanted to do other things, then those should have been singular items and singular bills moving through the chambers, and they can't do it. They can't do it. And there's a lot of reasons. But one of the big reasons is, in order to somehow bribe other members to vote for a bill, you could take a Picasso painting, this beautiful single item bill, single subject bill, title matching. You're like, okay, this is a good liberty bill. But Ted over there, I need a majority vote. Ted over there, he's not too liberty oriented. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to hold the paper up in the air, and I'm going to let a bird crap on it, because I have to stink this up with stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the title, that doesn't further the cause of liberty. And then Ted's going to vote for it, because Ted likes bills wrapped in turd sandwiches. That's what they're doing. They're bribing horrible members in their chambers who wouldn't know the Constitution if it smacked them on the forehead. And they'll add in their pork and their special little things, and then they get those kind of shady members to vote on it. Now, Kevin Spacey here, not the real one, the fake one, in the comments says, are the Dems better? No, they're no better. The thing is, the Republicans love, and they've been using this rhetoric. Well, at least we're not like those crazy Democrats. Yeah, but you're sure voting like they do. You're acting like them, passing unconstitutional, bloated omnibus bills, tax credits. You're doing every unconstitutional thing under the sun. So yes, they may be better on a few things, but a lot of them sure vote like Democrats. And when the Locke and Smith Foundation comes out with their final scoring, you're going to see that the majority of the House and the Senate is probably going to vote on average 40 to 45% constitutional and below. And the people that are voting 75 to 80% up, there's probably going to be 2 of them, maybe 3 max. So in my book, Republicans and Democrats in Missouri, for the majority, for the most part, yes, they differ on certain topics like transgender stuff and males, biological males playing in female sports and stuff like that. But when they vote, the majority of them vote constitutionally. They don't vote pro-liberty, and they continue to just take a big giant. They continue to take the Constitution into the bathroom when they're trying to take the Browns to the Super Bowl, and they wipe their hind end with it. And that's what happens in that building year after year after year. And until the people decide, the people have to decide that they are truly fed up. This will continue. This will continue on and on. And I hate to say it, in some rural areas, maybe, folks, it's time to just vote for a Democrat and shock the living crap. If you don't have a libertarian candidate in your district, maybe it's time to vote a Democrat in a rural area, and just a little, as they did in Iraq War I, a little shock and awe, just to throw them off their game a little bit. And Brandon, anything else before we move on to the next topic, sir?
Well, just kind of like to what you were talking about, to when Kevin Spacey says, are the Dems better? Because like I actually get to see the chats tonight. So
yeah, that's awesome. I forgot you see that.
Pretty excited about that. But no, it's not like with the Democrats, they're horrible, but at least they tell you they're horrible. The conservatives, I'll argue, are just as bad because they claim to be the ones for limiting government. And as we've talked about for the last couple weeks, the Freedom Caucus, as much as they want to look how much we got done, they did nothing to lower taxes, and they did nothing to lower spending or the size and scope of government. And so, yeah, they probably vote better than Democrats on some things, like you said, but the Democrats aren't the ones championing the things that the Republicans are supposed to be voting for. It's the Republicans championing this lower, restrictive government. And if what the Missouri legislature is, if that is conservative legislature, what the Missouri House did this session, then you can count me out of your conservatism.
Yeah, I don't want any part of it. Again, I'm hoping, I'm sure it'll be end of summer because Bryant's, I think he's got some children that are playing like summer sports, and so he's pretty busy. And I told him no rush, but I think after the summer winds down, we're gonna have Brian on. We're gonna dig in to a lot of this stuff, and really just get down to the heart of the matter and hear it from somebody who's in that chamber. Again, as he stated, and Brian is not an arrogant man, but Bryant is. He wants to do the right thing. And when I mean the right thing, it's not the right thing because the Republican Party and the lobbyists say so. It's because he knows the Constitution. He doesn't mind asking questions. He doesn't mind having a 3-hour conversation with Tom Martz on the phone about a piece of legislation to make sure he's doing the right thing. We need about 50 more of those people in that building just to make the lives of the other ones who don't care absolutely miserable day in and day out, to where they just start shoving their heads into ceiling fans, and it gets so bad, it becomes such an epidemic that they have to put rubber bumpers on everything so people don't just throw themselves into sharp, pointy objects and hurt themselves, because by God, some people in that building are standing up for what they should stand up for, which is the people who elect them, and try to get their liberties back. And then all the wine bags can just, I don't know, flail around on the floor like a 2-year-old having a temper tantrum. And then we can all video it and sell it on pay-per-view. And maybe we can generate enough revenue that we can cut the state budget by a few $1 billion. And that would be amazing. All right, let's go on to this next thing. So there is, let me do up all my screen switcheroo here. Again, we all know, that we all know about, oh, good Lord, if I can get back to the right screen here, my bad. We all remember Iraq War II, George W. Bush, his lies. I want to play a little bit of this audio. I might have to rewind it for a moment. But I want to play this audio because it leads into what we're going to be talking about, which is the newest situation between Israel and Iran. And so I want to play this as a little teaser because this sounds eerily familiar to what we're going to be hearing over the coming days and weeks as this thing escalates. I'm hoping that I'm somewhere close to where I should be starting out, because he comes up on the stage and he gets a big round of applause from all the neocons and warhawks. But let me see if I got this right here.
I remember the fact that he has invaded 2 countries before. I know for a fact that he's poisoned his own people. He doesn't believe in the worth of each individual. He doesn't believe in public dissent. I look forward to a dialogue. We must anticipate problems before that come. I will remind them that history has called us into action, that we love freedom, that we'll be deliberate, patient, and strong in the values that we adhere to. But we can't let the world's worst leaders blackmail, threaten, hold freedom-loving nations hostage with the world's worst weapons.
Yes. I think you can make the case hypothetically, very theoretically, you can make the case that there are occasions that might require preemptive action. That's why I say, give us the facts, give us a far better appreciation of the circumstances involving Iraq, and that may be one of them. But that case has not been made so far.
All right, so there's that there. Let me shut that off. So just remember that. Just remember all the things they told you about Iraq, and he's going to get a nuclear weapon, and he's going to use it, and we just can't allow that, so they have to have these preemptive actions, and we're not going to have a declaration of war from Congress. We're just going to go in there and start thumping heads because that's what we do. And that's just and here, okay, before we go any further, this is the thing that irritates me the most, is this crap continues to work on people. People believe this. They believe it about Iran right now. And because it works, because this line of propaganda has been working for so long, they keep trotting it out in front of the American public. And then you get the Mark Levin out there, the constitutional guy, who gets all fed up, and if you call him a neocon, he says you're being an anti-Semite. I can't imitate his voice because I don't want to. My voice is nasally enough. I do not want my voice associated with the great Mark Levin, but yes, you cannot say neocon. And how crazy is it? You can't say it, but they keep winning. Those type of people keep getting their way, and it is freaking horrifying. Before we go on to anything else, Brandon, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, we are already seeing that rhetoric. Okay, I'll start with admitting that. So the United States had the JCPOA deal with Iran, and under that deal, Iran kept their nuclear enrichment to civilian level. And then Donald Trump left that deal. So then there was nothing, and then re-implemented the same sanctions that were held before the JCPOA was signed. So, yeah, like Agarizer said, 2 weeks away from having nukes for 20 years. That's exactly what's going on here, because we've talked about it on this show. Netanyahu has been preaching that Iran's been 5 years away from a nuclear weapon for 5 years. Well, that was what they launched this attack, was based on the fact that they were claiming that Iran was very close to getting a nuclear weapon. But Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that our own intelligence community has concluded that the Ayatollah has no intention of building a nuclear weapon. And if they decided to start one today, that it would take them 3 years to finally get a weapon that they could fire that would be a nuclear atomic bomb. And so it's already ridiculous. But I can tell you, so they tried to act, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump first tried to act like the United States had nothing to do with this Israel attack. Well, first of all, it was our intelligence. It was not mine. I had nothing to do with this. It was the United States government's intelligence, and the United States government's purchased weapons, like manufactured in America. And the exact same context we use to demonize countries like Iran, well, they're proxy armies. They have weapons and intelligence from Iran. So Israel is a proxy army of the United States under the same definition that you would qualify Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis. The same way you would qualify them as an Iranian proxy would be the exact same way you would qualify Israel as an American proxy. They use our weapons, our intelligence. So what is the difference between an ally and a proxy? And so our proxy, the United States military's proxy. I keep doing that. I keep saying our. It's not our. My taxpayer dollars go to it, but I other than that, I have nothing to do with it. The United States, they basically, Israel is a proxy for the United States, and they launched these attacks on the nuclear sites. Like, they launched an attack into Iran. And what makes me feel like the United States is already partly culpable is we pulled all of we were evacuating embassies the week leading up to that attack. We knew it was coming. So, obviously you're going to have all of the right wing, not all of them, but a lot of the right wing pundits, the neoconservative type pundits, the war hawks, they're all, well, we need to do it. Obviously, I'm sure you've seen Lindsey Graham's war cry on Fox News. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. We've already been dragged into this war. I mean, and the only real debate is there an off ramp or not? And from all accounts, not. I know the Wall Street Journal had an article out saying that Iran was looking to make a deal with the United States, but I've heard several other sources contradict that. So not really sure if there's an off-ramp at this point, but like you said, we're going to be hearing all of that same rhetoric. Like they were so close to having a nuke, but our own intelligence community already debunked that. So whatever.
Yeah, it's such a sticky thing. Now, I did hear something today that the IAEA said that they consider 90% processed uranium to be nuclear grade. I think it's 25 grams at 90 or 95%. That's what they consider nuclear grade plutonium or uranium. Iran's is at 60%. Now, they did say, like, they could be at 90% in a week. And I'm like, really? In a week? You think? Do they have everything they need to make it? You know what? Before we go any farther, Dave Smith brought up a great point on his show, and I listened to this morning. Remember Libya? Libya and Gaddafi got rid of all their weapons, and they bragged about what a success it was. And then Obama comes into office, and what do? Gaddafi gets murdered on the streets. A violent regime takes over because nature abhors a vacuum. You can't just pull a leader and go, ta-da, and not expect someone who's generally very power hungry to step in and take over. They gave up their weapons and we smashed them to bits. So why would other countries looking at that situation, regardless if they have nuclear weapons or not, why would they willingly give up all their weapons? We've already established it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what we say. We'll lie, cheat, and steal. And if we deem it necessary, we'll smash you into tiny pieces. And it's a legitimate point that he brings up. If I'm a small country and I have neocons, yes, neocons, regardless of what Mark Levin and what the other schmucks say, dumping the war drum since the 2001, remember they were part of the axis of evil, right? Constantly beating the war drums against my country. You think I wouldn't sit here and go, oh, I have to get rid of all my weapons. That'll keep me safe. No, because I'm afraid at any moment they're going to come in there and try to tear up Jake. So I'm going to try to keep, no matter if you agree with these leaders or not, generally they're going to be like, I don't want people coming and taking over. I'm going to try to retain my power. Our leaders would do the same thing. So if I'm these other countries and I have the Libya experiment there, or what do you want to call it, the Libya example, am I going to give up my weapons next? No, because I'm afraid they're going to do to me what they just did to him a few years ago. And Hillary Clinton just ran around. She might as well had a cheerleader's outfit on and pom-poms, which is a disgusting thought. But the way she cheerleaded after it happened, like, look at us, we nailed it. No, you didn't. You screwed a whole country of people over and ruined everything. And yeah, you did something that Israel and the neocons found amazing and orgasmic, but you did nothing good. And she kind of maybe lost the election on that too. In fact, she didn't want to even talk about it when it came to the campaigning. But it is an interesting point. What we do and what we say to these countries to try to get them under the thumb and get the regime we want. Other countries look at that. We're spouting the same BS to them, and they're like, wait a minute, Gaddafi did that, and he got literally murdered. I think I'm going to hold on to some stuff just in case they come in here. I can fight back a little bit. And it's an important distinction to make. this foreign policy of ours is nowhere remotely close to flawless, moral, upstanding, liberty oriented, constitutional, none of those things. And I don't see why another leader in another foreign country would take most of our leadership anywhere close to seriously the way we've been acting for the past, well, since the Korean War, basically. I just don't get it.
Well, you take them deadly seriously, but there's just no appeasing them without becoming a proxy state. I mean, even if you were dedicated to peace, if you're in the way of an ally, then they're coming after you in some way or another. And here's another interesting point. So if our goal is the goal regime change in Iran at this point, because I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how like they can't have a nuclear weapon, but that's a hard line for the Iranians, has been for years. So they're going to continue to enrich uranium. And so what I don't understand is, like, when you look at a country like Afghanistan, its military, like the Taliban's military, is nowhere close to as capable as what Iran's military is, let alone like the Israelis cannot eliminate Hamas out of Gaza. They will admit that Hamas is close to as strong in numbers and in members and in all the same ways, that Hamas is almost as powerful as when their campaign began, because it's mostly civilians dealing with the starvation, and a lot of civilians were killed. And I'm like you said, I'm sure there were Hamas members killed in these strikes, but they're replenishing those numbers with people who are mad at Israelis just as fast. And so if you have the Israelis who can't get rid of Hamas in Gaza, which is a smaller area with a much less organized, much less powerful force, if that's even what you want to call Hamas, and it's taking them 18 months. They've destroyed all of Gaza and they still can't get rid of Hamas. And then also you think about the Houthis. The United States, the UK, and Israel took turns bombing the Houthis, bombing Yemeni ports and areas where they were firing rockets into the Red Sea. Or I think it's the Red Sea, but either way. And the Houthis couldn't be defeated. And this is something that we started back in 2015, 2016, when we were aiding the Saudi Arabians to bomb them up until 2022, and then resumed under Joe Biden after October 7th and the Houthis' retaliation. So, and again, Iran is much bigger and much more powerful than the Houthis, who withstood years and years of bombing, the poorest country on the planet. And so what I don't understand is, like, what do people think the cost of this war is going to be? Like, let's say the Ayatollah managed to stay in power and there's no regime change. Let alone if there is a regime change, how long is it going to take for a power vacuum not to fill up, civil war within Iran, terrorist acts all over the world? Because, again, a lot of the terrorism that we see is from Sunni Muslims. It's not from Shiite Muslims. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, a lot of those groups, they're Sunni. They're not Shiite, which is what Iran and that faction of Islam is. And so what I don't what I have a hard time fathoming is all these people who support this war, who think Americans should be backing this war and financing it and all of this. What do they think the cost is going to be? Like, John, what do you like? Can you even begin to quantify? Like, we have a hard time dealing with the Houthis, to the point where we signed a peace agreement with them. They don't bomb us, we won't bomb them. And they're a much smaller army than Iran. So where does this go if there is no regime change?
I don't know. I think it's just, again, the back during Iraq and Afghanistan war campaigns, and they kept, dipping their toe in the water with Iran. And a lot of military personnel said, don't go in there with troops. You cannot win. The geography of that country, you will not win if you go into Iran. You will not. Don't do it. And I think it's just like, well, we might not put troops in there, but we'll just bomb them in the smithereens. Again, we'll displace people will push them into other nations like Europe. I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these other countries we've screwed around in. They end up these, these European countries let them come in. The UK, again, France, Germany, Italy, all this stuff. We see what's happened in those countries. That the worst of the worst do some horrible things when you displace them. They're angry. And if these countries, and they feel like these people are some of the same people who were backing the attacks against our country, so they go in, they get displaced from their country, they go into other countries, and they cause headaches and heartaches and all that. It just nothing good comes from this. I see that you just saw Kevin Spacey's comment there. I can't say it out loud, but the American people tend to look at things like this the same way with Palestine, the same way with Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya. They look at it as Netanyahu and some of these other yahoos say, it's good versus evil. But we don't look at the totality of the human toll that it takes on these countries when you displace these people and they flee to other regions, and it causes chaos everywhere else. And we just don't look at that. The only thing that we say is if we see, like in England, the amount of rape. There were rape gangs all over the UK. People were raising alarms, and then the UK government got upset because somebody dared to tell the truth, right? They don't want to, but they don't want to talk about that either. All they want to say is that we got a few people who are acting a fool, and we've got to put them in prison, but everything's cool. Don't worry about it. We got it under control. You don't want to be a xenophobe and not let people of other cultures in the country, right? Let's not be xenophobic. Let's not be a Trumpster here. And they just try to patch over everything. But again, between Iraq and Afghanistan, 1 million people dead. Starvation, everything else. At some point, the American people have got to come around to the fact that diplomacy should take the driver's seat in all cases. You don't have, just because you don't want to blow a place to smithereens doesn't mean you agree with what that leader's doing. But I can guarantee it, any time in this country, 50% of the nation doesn't like the president. But you know what else we don't do? We don't demand or ask another country to come in and run a proxy war and attack us and blow us up because our leader sucks. And 50% of the people like that leader. We don't do that. Why do we do it other places? And why do the American peoples, so many Americans turn a blind eye, close their ears to the information that's coming out, and blindly back this kind of thing? Like they act as if we're only attacking the military and its leadership and leaving out the devastation that is wrought across that whole country, with whether it's boots on the ground or bombs dropping constantly or missiles, all that's ignored because we have to take out the bad guy. But again, I've stated it several times over the last several months. It's real easy for us to sit here as a nation and cheerlead. You know why? Because it's not happening here. But if it happened here, oh man, the citizenry would be absolutely enraged. They'd be calling for just all-out war. But if it happens over there and we're screwing with other people, no big deal. Because we've got it too comfortable. I'm not saying I want us to be attacked. I'm just saying you got to start looking at this as a humankind thing and not, there's a bad dictator in another country and we must take him out because he might get a nuclear weapon. Also, one other question I'll let Brandon take back over because I'm going off on a tangent again. Also, I have one other question. Why is it? What makes this country and its foreign policy that has been horrible for years, what makes it good enough that we can have nuclear weapons, but certain other countries cannot? absolutely, these people can't have nuclear weapons. They'll murder the whole world. What have we been doing in the Middle East for 20 years? Murdering people like mad. But it's okay. We can have nuclear weapons because we're up on the moral ladder. We're still a couple rungs higher than them. We're not quite despotic yet. But if you ask the people in the other countries where we're, they don't want us there, tearing up Jake, I mean, I don't think they're going to look too favorably at us and say that we have some kind of moral superiority over their population. So there's a lot of things that people need to take in consideration before they start cheerleading another war and stop listening to the likes of the Mark Levins and all the other neocons and just start thinking about it as, is this something that we as human beings need to be doing to other human beings so we feel a little better about ourselves? I don't understand it.
Another thing, like to what you were just saying, that kind of drives me nuts is I hear this talking point a lot, and it is that we need to bomb Iran because their leaders and their people chant death to America. And on its face, that is horrible. I'm not arguing or disagreeing that that's not a horrible thing to do or say about an entire country of people, but they never stop and say why. Like if you're going to try to feed me that they hate us for our freedom that George Bush tried to sell us back when he was president, I'm not falling for that. So again, the question is why would why would another country start chanting death to America? Maybe it's because well, first of all, when you're talking specifically about Iran, it was because we overthrew their government in the 50s, installed the Shah, let him rule as a brutal dictator for 26 years. Then whenever they overthrew him for the Ayatollah, we brought the Shah to America, and everyone thought we were going to treat his cancer and try to reinstall him. And so that's really where the breakdown with the Iranians came from. But then after that, we funded Saddam Hussein's army to go and fight the Iranians to overthrow their government, which failed. And then we actually overthrew the Iraqis. We overthrew Libya. We overthrew their Iranian friends in Syria. We attacked the Houthis in Yemen. We started bombing Saudi Arabia. I mean, again, there is no good reason to chant death to an entire country, but you are so willfully blind and naive if you won't even start to ask yourself why. Because we talk about blowback all the time, like blowback from terrorism. That started from the CIA in the 50s based on what we did in Iran. That is true. That is a true story. You can look that up. And so 100%, where do we get off as being like the good in the good versus evil fight? Again, I'm not saying that they're great people, but we have to take a look at ourselves in the mirror and maybe change some of our own decisions, and we won't have other countries chanting death to America.
And this is a question I've always asked when I see that, because you'll see that, you'll see them post a video like a bunch of Iranian leaders, right? And they're speaking in a language that clearly we don't understand. And then there'll be captions that says death to America. How do we know that's what they're really saying? I'm not saying they're not saying it, but no one has shown me proof that that's what they're actually saying. Right? No one said, oh, yeah. They're clearly. I've never had anybody who understands whatever Farsi or whatever they speak come up to me and go, yeah, I heard it. And I know Farsi. They were clearly saying death to America. Like, oh, that's the thing. They say it, but how do I know that's true? I'm sorry, I can't hardly take our government or it's the media at its word anymore. They've lied to me so many times. They could be saying something else besides death to America, and I would have no clue because I'm basing that on what they're telling me. But they've lied us into wars for decades. So how do again, I'm not saying they're not, but I would like that to be certified from someone who speaks the language. That's just me because I don't trust them anymore.
Yeah, well, more importantly, I like your point, but no. The Iranian, like if our media was being honest with us, we would see a lot more Putin on our TV. Like, not saying he's a good looking guy and that I want more Putin on my TV, but if we're being honest, we would hear more speeches from foreign leaders, like the Iranian leader and the Russian leader and North Korea and China. Like, if our government and our media wanted to be honest with us, they could play clips of those people talking. We never see that in American media. They never play those clips, not even translated, not even like you said, not even with bad lip readings and poor translations. We don't even get to see it. They don't even put it on there because they know that if we actually heard it from the horse's mouth, that we might have a different opinion and we might not go along with whatever the American media tells us. I mean, I've actually spent some time watching some of Putin's speech, and if you watched what he said with Tucker Carlson when Putin sat down with Tucker Carlson, that sounded like a reasonable guy who could be dealt with. It didn't sound like a brutal dictator who wanted to take over Europe. And that was the most exposure that most of us have ever had to a Putin speech. And that is a real shame. They have real, like other countries can have a real grievance against the United States, but you don't hear it. Like in horseback, shirtless. Yeah, we don't see more shirtless Putin on horseback.
You know, and if we do get a clip, it's 20 seconds out of context. Again, so how do you know they clip them generally, unless it's pro-Israel, they'll clip the most like, what's the word I'm looking for here? They'll find the clip that sounds the most aggressive towards us or another country. They'll clip that, and they don't put in the 2 minutes before and after so you get some context. They're clipping it out for a specific reason because the media has proved itself to be the propaganda machine for the war machine. They work hand in hand. So even if like Brandon's saying, I want 10 minutes of the speech. I don't want 30-second sound bites that makes me stomp up and down and throw a temper tantrum and say, got to kill Putin or whoever it is. I want context in sound clips, and we don't get that from our media. You have to get that from independent media, where they give you 2 or 3 minutes, and you get to hear the whole thing, and then you get to digest it, dissect it, think about it for a little while, and go, oh, okay, that's different. But not this stupidity that our media spoon feeds us right now. It's a disgrace. To me, what's even more disgraceful is that so many people still take that, swallow it down, and then spit it back out randomly to other people when they're talking. It's like, what are you doing right now? And there are too many people. Again, the Mark Levins and everything else out there in the world. Daryl? What's his goofy? The one that debated Dave Smith or what?
Douglas
the one
Murray?
Douglas Murray. Have you even been? People like that are they're just being trotted out right now as the be all end all to the foreign policy experts. And Mark Levin's supposed to be this constitutional expert, but I haven't heard him talk much about preemptive, unconstitutional wars. Doesn't seem to say anything about that. Seems okay. I don't know if I'd be taking constitutional advice from Mr. Mark Neocon Levin. I think on X, everybody that sees a Mark Levin post should just, in the comment section, just like spam the word neocon down it, and just to where he like either deletes it or he blows a head gasket, and then the next photo you see is a small mushroom cloud coming out of the top of his warped little head. I would find that highly entertaining. But yeah, let me pull up this. Let me swap screens here real quick. This came from this is from antiwar.com. Before I go any farther on that, I guess I need to show the screen too. I'm stupid. There we go. Before I go any farther onto this, Scott has people apparently that he trusts on the inside of the White House, and they're telling him that the U.S. is going to attack Iran within a day. And Dave Smith had people that he trusts saying the same thing. And the same people that were saying things about Israel going to attack here a little bit ago, they were dead on before it happened. So people, don't be shocked if we take action. We've sent multiple refueling aircraft in. We've moved in another aircraft carrier. So do not be surprised if we attack Iran. But the thing is, U.S. intelligence, Iran was not pursuing nuclear bomb before Israel's attack. U.S. intelligence assessed that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons, and even if it chose to do so, it would take up to 3 years for Tehran to be able to produce and deliver a nuclear bomb against a target of its choosing. U.S. assessment goes against the claims from Israeli I almost called him Prime Roast Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who launched the war under the pretext of preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But President Trump appears to be taking Israel's word over his own intelligence agencies, as he told reporters that he didn't care about his director of national intelligence assessment on the issue, which is Tulsi Gabbard, because in March he said Iran is not building a new nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. Brandon was talking about that earlier. When asked about this assessment, President Trump said, "I don't care what you said. I think they're very close to having a nuclear weapon." Netanyahu claimed in an interview on Sunday that he shared intelligence with the U.S. that Iran could have developed a nuclear weapon within months or a year, although that was not the conclusion of U.S. intelligence agencies based on the CNN report. But even based on Netanyahu's own timeline, the U.S. would have had time to continue negotiations with Iran. Israel attacked Iran 2 days before another round of negotiations between the U.S. and Iran was set to be held. Trump has been demanding that Iran eliminate its nuclear weapons program, which was a non-starter for Tehran. Despite the apparent impasse, Iran was set to present a counter-proposal to the U.S., but the talks were canceled after Israel launched its war. And here's a question. I'm not saying this is absolute. It's just a question out there to pose here. Is there any chance that Israel was not happy that Trump was continuing negotiations and said, well, we can kill that negotiation real quick and we'll just strike? And to hell with the guy. People have made the case, even though they're not big Trump supporters, that Trump generally is a negotiator first, not attack first. And because he wants to be seen as a winner, and he wants that to be his legacy, that he is a negotiator in all things. And Netanyahu's like, sorry, bro, don't care. We're not getting what we want. We'll blow them up. And if that's the case, if that is true, then shame on Trump for not calling that out and not saying, hey, I wanted to continue negotiations and Netanyahu decided to attack anyway. So if that's true, it's still bad on Trump because he didn't call it out. He didn't say, I wanted to negotiate. I wanted to do this peacefully. They decided to attack anyway. And so, again, I'm not saying that's true. It's a question I'm posing. Because if that is the case, either way, he screwed the pooch. He could slam Netanyahu in the media and say, that guy's out of control. But he doesn't want to do that because nobody in the White House is going to dare talk to a war criminal in that manner. And now that's based on the international courts. I'm not saying that the international courts are awesome and that you should take everything they say as the gospel, but he has been found guilty of war crimes. And the last couple of times he's traveled to America, he's had to take a straight shot across the ocean because if he landed in Europe, there's a very good chance he would have been arrested as soon as he got off the plane because he's been found guilty in international courts. But it's a question I'm posing. I don't want, because the information that we're getting is so chaotic. I want to pose all these questions. This is not a pass on Trump because I think, again, he screwed the pooch. Either way you go about it. If he let Israel, if they attacked to screw up the negotiations and he's not willing to speak out on it, then he's an idiot. And he needs to be called out for that. If he knew it was coming, he's also an idiot. And he needs to be called out on that. Either way you go. I'm not going to make excuses for him. I'm not going to say, well, you know. Nope, I'm not. I voted for the guy in 2024. I did. And I am eating some crow. And I will do that, and I will be honest in what I've done. But I'm going to call him out, too. I'm not going to be like to some of the cult members he has and keep changing their minds as Trump changes his and make excuses for him. I am not going to do that. I don't like this at all. I think it's freaking retarded. I think it's immoral. I think it's evil. And I think if we're going to call out, because there will be some people like, he's guilty of war crimes. That's fine. You know what else you need to do? You need to go back the last several presidents and try them all for war crimes. I'm just saying, if we're going to eat, because people love to beat up on Trump because he's Trump. He deserves a lot of it. But some people do it just because he's Orange Man dictator and they don't like it. They don't have a specific reason. They have the little weird things in their mind. They don't like it. But if we're going to say this president should be tried for war crimes, so should Obama, so should Bush, so should Clinton, so should H.W. Bush. We can go back and back and back. And you know what? I think I am not a flexible man, and I am not athletic anymore. I'm 52 years old. But if someone came on the news tomorrow and said, the last 6 presidents are going to be tried for war crimes, I'll be a gold medalist in the Olympics. I will do backflips, cartwheels, pirouettes, everything. I'll do it on ice skates, rollerblades, and gym mats. You'll be like, holy crap, that's the craziest thing we've seen a 52-year-old do. And I'll be like, what was your inspiration? Like, they just tried a bunch of presidents for war crimes and it made me all happy and giddy inside. It's like I did an 8 ball of meth and drank a pot of coffee and I'm out here doing cartwheels. But anyway, I just wanted to add that in. Again, not saying it's true.
The reason I don't think it's true is because, you can take politicians, they'll talk a lot of game about it. But if you look at the movements, so we were pulling people out of our embassies in Iraq and we were moving diplomats out of the area before Israel launched their attack, which means we knew in advance it was going to happen. And if they're going to use our weapons and our intelligence to launch this attack and we're going to pretend we had nothing to do with it, the only part we had nothing to do with it is that the person flying the airplanes or flying the drones was not an American. It probably wasn't an Israeli. But outside of that, we were as involved as a country can be without literally being the ones pulling the trigger. And so it just really doesn't seem like this was something Netanyahu could have done behind Trump's back. I mean, he could have announced that he was doing it and not gave Trump a choice. But then at that point, Trump could have came to the television set and been, hey, Netanyahu says he's going to attack and I don't want him to do it. But he says he's going to do it. And he didn't. So, I mean, I would like to believe that Trump is a negotiator at heart. But when? Since he came into office, what has he negotiated? A very similar trade deal with China that we already had, a trade deal with Canada, kind of like a temporary pause on tit for tat tariffs. I mean, he didn't really end the Israelis are still bombing the hell out of Gaza. Russia just launched a massive attack on Kiev yesterday. We put more troops in the South China Sea. We've bombed the Somalia within this last year, including Trump's presidency, we've bombed Somalia a record number of times. So again, Donald Trump's this master negotiator, but his first instinct is to negotiate, sure, but where? Where is he doing all this masterful negotiating that I want to see? The Houthis were hitting our ships, so he said, hey, if you quit shooting us, we'll quit shooting you. That's the only negotiation we had. It was because we were having our ships bombed needlessly. So again, someone can point to Trump being this great negotiator. I would love to start seeing some more of it. It would be awesome to be, a part of that. But no, again, all of the evidence shows that Trump knew about this attack beforehand, did nothing at all to stop it, if not helped, facilitate it, and then also has refused to do any good negotiating since he became president. So no, I don't buy that.
And the thing is, I don't want to be mistaken as saying he's a great negotiator, but he is, that's what he's done his whole life. My thing is, he's so narcissistic, right? He wants to be seen as the one in control at all times. And my question, part of that other question is, if Netanyahu said we're attacking anyway, and even if they told him, hey, sorry about your negotiations, we're attacking anyway, he doesn't have the ability to admit that somebody did something he told them not to do. He's so narcissistic. He wants to be seen as the guy. So let's say, again, it's a question, not saying it happened. But let's say Netanyahu said, I don't give a crap. Because I can see Netanyahu doing that. I can see him saying, I don't care. They've done it before. They've gone in and just said, oh, yeah, we negotiated a ceasefire. Flipped them the bird, continue the bombing. I can see a Trump-type personality not wanting to admit that somebody got the one up on him. Because, in that guy's narcissistic world, that's like the worst thing you can do to him is to say, yeah, we don't care. I don't think you're that great. I think you suck. And they just go against the grain. Again, begging question. Not saying I'm right. It's a question somebody else brought up, and I'm like, that's a good point. Because in his world, he's it. Like, he's the top dog. And he'll say in press conferences, I don't trust anybody, which I can believe that. I can believe that he doesn't trust anybody, being from the business world and that dog-eat-dog world in New York City. But yeah, I can see in his narcissistic way that he's never going to admit that someone went against his wishes. And then he doesn't want to admit it in the mainstream media because they're going to be like, see, he's an imbecile. He's useless. No one listens to him. Stop listening to Orange Man Dictator. Again, I'm just throwing things out there. I don't know, because here's the thing. I don't trust Trump. I don't trust what the media says. But then I don't trust Netanyahu either. There's three sets of liars here. And how do we know exactly, looking at their information, without Scott Horton and the like digging in, if you just listen to those three groups, you wouldn't know what the truth was, because everything's so misdirection, and they do these things and you think you're tracking, and then suddenly you're like, well, that came out of left field. And God bless Scott Horton and Keith Knight and some of these other guys, Kyle Anzalone and the other that are posting other stuff on like antiwar.com and scotthorton.org and some of the other places. Because if we didn't have folks like them, it would be really hard to track what is truth and what is fiction in this whole thing. It's freaking terrible.
The reason that part doesn't really pass the smell test for me is if you've got the most narcissistic person on the planet who can't handle pushback and doesn't like anyone deviating away from his plan, he'll go after Elon Musk, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, just for simple policy disagreements. You've got a guy who's openly disobeying what you're hoping to accomplish in the Middle East, and the most narcissistic man on the planet's going to double down and take that guy's side. I'm not buying it. Like, I again, it's an interesting theory. It's an interesting question to raise, but no, I'm not buying that for a second. The most narcissistic man on the planet, if you go against his wishes and you start bombing and ruining his negotiations, he's going to go straight to the media and say you're a pathetic POS and that we're not going to back you in your war. That's what a real narcissist, that's what Trump would do if that were true. I'm actually, the more and more this goes on, like, I'm not wholly, he either is wholly bought by the Israeli lobby and just supports them because of the money, or they might actually have some damning evidence on him. And I hate to throw that around loosely, especially with all of the Russiagate stuff, but it's simply not America first in any possible conceivable way. Now, one thing I did think about today was how no one even mentions Saudi Arabia in any of this. They are one of the biggest players in the Middle East, and they're completely silent, and they're not saying a word. Like, I'm not even hearing anybody talk about Saudi Arabia. and you would at least think we would hear their opinion on this, or, you know, we would have, because Israel and the Saudi people don't really get along very well. Like the relationship between the actual like people of those nations is not great. And there's a lot of sympathy for Hamas within Saudi Arabia. But then now you have like basically not because again, the Saudis and the Israelis are both friends with the Americans. They buy our weapons, and, you know, we have different deals or whatever you want to call it going on with both. They're our ally in some regard, both of them in some way, the United States government ally. And so they're making out like bandits right now because the United States is targeting Iran, and they are facing zero blowback for that. And so, I mean, I just think that's an interesting piece to this whole thing, is that you're not a peep from the Saudis about any of this.
Well, and you know, that's the other thing too. We pay Egypt and Jordan not to mess with Israel. We also pay Saudi Arabia not to mess with Israel. And we pay Saudi Arabia to keep their mouth shut at the right time. So that doesn't surprise me, because that's another piece of this thing. Talking about that. Think about that. Paying countries not to go to war with a country. And then we give money to Iran, and we give money to Israel. And now they're launching stuff at each other. And it's all our money. It's taxpayer money. So we pay countries not to attack Israel. We give money to Iran. We give money to Israel. And we give weapons to Israel. And then they launch crap at each other. And meanwhile, we're sitting at home. And if you have enough brain cells to rub together, you should go, hey, aren't we paying all these people a lot of money, billions of dollars, and they're doing all this stupid crap with our money? Can we pull out? This is a game I don't want to be a part of anymore. I don't want to buy another ticket to the show. This is a bad circus. The Bears are on fire. They've mauled the trainers. The Tigers are eating people in the crowd. Horrible circus. 0 out of 5 stars, would not recommend. And so, you know, the more layers you look at, the money, just taxpayer money alone, is horrific. The countries we pay to not attack another country. I mean, I don't know. If you don't want Jordan to attack Israel, then maybe, I don't know, you talk to the leaders of Israel and say, you guys need to work out your differences. But why should we have to pay a country not to attack another country? That's when, if you're Israel, right, you got to be feeling like awesome. Because not only are you getting billions of dollars every year and all the weapons you can choke down that you can turn around and sell for a profit, you can also get the other country who's your best big bully buddy to pay other countries not to attack you. Why? Because it's not your money. Also, you can take some of that U.S. money probably and fund Hamas and then poke them once in a while, instigate them into an attack. So then you can attack back and then say, you can't negotiate with these people. We can't have a two-state solution. So if you're Israel and you got U.S. money and the military, military alliance behind you, like, it'd be like me. I'm 5'6", 150 pounds. It'd be like me taking, I don't know, like a linebacker from the NFL, walking down the street, just yelling racial epithets and breaking windows, and somebody comes out to kick my butt, and I go, hey, you sure you want to do that? And I got this 350-pound linebacker behind me who looks like he can smash you like an aluminum can. And they're like, yeah, I'm good. That's how Israel's got to feel right now. Because seemingly no matter what they do, the American dollar and its military industrial complex is right there, like the NFL linebacker right behind them. And all Israel has to do is go, you sure you want to mess with me? And they just point over their shoulder, like, look who's standing behind me. And it just incites them. It just incentivizes them to do these things. And then they know, because of AIPAC and all the lobbyist money that gets spread around D.C. to all the congressmen except Thomas Massey, apparently, that they can buy our favor and then influence our foreign policy so that we will go and seemingly maybe help literally our stuff flown by our pilots or our drone pilots bombing and blowing up their stuff. And then again, the seven countries in 5 years policy that they put out in around 2000. Well, actually the early 90s, and it resurfaced in 2001. The only country left is Iran. So if I'm Israel, I'm feeling top of the world, brother. I'm feeling cloud nine. And it must feel amazing. I don't know how. But if you're a brutal war criminal and you're a perpetual liar, it must feel amazing that you could do all these things and have the American media and its government and a whole lot of religious leaders and American people backing your play all the time. And I'll give you a quick example. This literally just showed up on Facebook from one of our Republican state reps. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the first, well, I'll read a little bit of the second paragraph. But this is the state of mind of some of the people here in the United States. And it's sad. I have no problem with the U.S. supporting, supplying, or advising Israel in its fight against Iran. Here's the thing. Here's what gets me. Here's the propaganda kicking in. Tehran is led by a regime that hates us, our culture, and everything we are. If Iran can be dismantled by Israel with our help, so be it. However, sending our troops into an arena in which we have no direct threat to our security is a step too far, in my opinion. I sincerely hope we are not dragged into another war where soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines come home in flag-draped coffins when we could have avoided such. We've been at war undeclared for nearly all of the last 25 years. I fear we've gotten so used to seeing our young men and women shipped off to some foreign area, we're no longer affected by the unbelievable burden it brings upon us all, and especially the families of those brave warriors. But if we do go to war, send them with all the fury and might of the U.S. military, destroy the enemy decisively and completely, then bring them home. Bro, that's for me. I'm not gonna bring up his name. That's a kind of a highly thought of Missouri State rep saying that, and there's so much in there. But when you get to the middle paragraph, if you send, and that's the mentality I was talking about earlier, right? If you send our troops in there, that's too far. Oh, why? Oh, but it's cool to use other people's soldiers and civilians like pawns and chess because they hate our culture and everything that we are. I don't buy that for 1 second. That sounds like Iraq, Afghanistan propaganda from 2001. But think about that mentality right there. We can just, if we're going to go in full send, but that's too far if we send our troops and airmen and Marines and U.S. Air Force in there. Okay, cool, but we can just let other people, civilians, get blown to hell. That's cool because there's going to be a regime change. I'm sorry, that is disgusting to me. I don't understand that. I don't.
Well, also, do you think we're safer because we're only supplying the arms and the money?
No.
Not to mention, I talked about this a few weeks ago. Think about the trillions with a T, the trillions of dollars we've wasted on Middle Eastern conflicts, and the probably trillions more that a full-fledged armed conflict with Iran would cost. And all of the good that we could have done with that money. It was tax dollars taken from us, upwards of getting close to $10+ trillion. Trillion dollars. I mean, that alone is an unfathomable amount of money just wasted on burnt fuel and rubble and bombs that have already exploded. I mean, there's just no. I just don't see how people can make this argument that it's worth it at this point. I mean, like you said earlier, there is no direct threat to the United States, to our land or our people. We are surrounded by a giant friendly neighbor to the north, a giant, relatively friendly neighbor to the south and 2 oceans separating us. And you're talking about a country that is no longer like, if you want to talk about it, Hezbollah has been knocked down a huge peg since Israel started bombing them. Syria overthrew their secular dictator for a Sunni dictator. Like a bunch of the people, Gaza, Hamas has been, they're still a thing, but they've been attacked and they've been beat down, and that they've got their own problems going on. So Iran is barely even a threat to other Middle Eastern countries, let alone a threat to the United States, where we feel the need to get involved and make a whole new sect of Islam hate Americans. I mean, not that they already don't hate us, but I guess hate us more and enough to go do something crazy. Yeah, Voodoo Queen says, think about all of the infrastructure that could be repaired with that money. I mean, I don't know if there are enough potholes to spend $10 trillion on.
And when you, to your point, what you're talking about, I agree. That's a screwed up thing about it too, is that so you create. It's like that's the end goal. It's not regime change. It is, but we also have to keep creating enemies that we have to keep fighting. Because if you really wanted a regime change, I think you would maybe help instruct the people how to bring about more liberty and maybe help them in ways like that monetarily without the weapons and everything. And they could try to bring about change in their country. But if you go up blowing things up at will, and again, displacing a lot of people and killing a lot of innocent civilians, you just infuriate that population. You've created another enemy that you have to fight later down on the road, that they might go into another country and take over. Oh, now we got to go there. And you just chase them around the map. You never take them out. You create new ones and you just chase them around the map. You just chase them around the Middle East. You keep creating enemies. The war machine keeps getting fed. You keep producing all this military equipment and selling it to other nations, or just giving it to them, however you do it. And it just seems like that's the goal. We're just going to keep creating enemies and keep the war machine fed, and for no good reason, other than the fact the only thing that they can tell us is that he's not a very nice guy to his people. Well, when we go in there and we start just indiscriminately dropping bombs, guess what? We're not going to be very nice to those people either. It's just that we do it supposedly in the name of freedom, because we're going to spread freedom dust around the globe. But yeah, we're just creating new enemies. Again, what was the math? 2 - 1 = 10 is what they said during Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what they're doing in all these countries.
Because America's precision striking is so precise that we almost always kill civilians. And then when we kill civilians trying to take out a target, we end up creating more terrorists, which is what Israel has done in Gaza with Hamas. Like, they'll take out 15,000 Hamas members and 15,000 more people, killing, 60,000 civilians in the process. A number that's probably low because they don't count the people buried in the rubble still. Those are only confirmed kills. And so then, the family members of those 50,000 people, they're willing to step up and replace the people who were killed. So, yeah, there it is. It's, what, I like Austin Peterson. I mean, he's great on economics. And very free market, like actually truly understands what free market capitalism is. But he is, I mean, I couldn't believe some of the stuff he was tweeting about this. Like a couple days ago, he tweeted, starting to think that, where was it? Starting to think that even if we leave, oh, no, that's not it. It was something like starting to think that even if we leave other countries alone, that something tells me that even if we mostly left other countries alone, that many of them would still try to kill us. Tweeted that 2 days ago. Yesterday. And then had some other one. He said, even if you use strictly Christian just war principles, you would still have Scott Horton write a 1,500-page rant about why you were a war criminal, and Dave Smith would call for you to be impeached. It's like, and then also someone else brought up that regime change doesn't work, and he said regime change works in Korea, Japan, and Germany, like citing those as successful regime changes. Well, okay, how about use something from this century? Because I could name you like 9 different examples where it failed. And what instituted and came after our overthrow was way worse. But let's go back to the 1940s to use our examples. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, he lived through the same, like, Iraq war, Afghanistan war that we all lived through. Why does he take this, we have to defend Israel position? I don't know. It's just so weird coming from a guy who, like, on a lot of issues, I actually respect his opinion. But I'm just like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing out of libertarians.
2 things. A, I think for a little while, there might, just because of what we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years, there's going to be some upset people for a little while. So, yes, we will still have some enemies. But if we continue to stay out, that will go away. That will recede after a while. Like, yeah, at first, you probably, like, interior Nate in this country, you're going to want to listen to you're going to want your intelligence people to keep an ear open and an eye open to make sure nobody's going to do anything inside the country. But after a while, that's going to go away. That's going to recede because they're like, oh, they really mean it. They're not screwing around over here anymore. Now we can go back to the way we want things. And we're like, yeah, but if you do something stupid, we're also not helping you. But we would have to stay true to that. So, yes, a little while after, I can still see us have some enemies out there because of the way we've done things for the last 20-something years. But again, after a while, that's just going to disappear, especially if they know they can't provoke us to do something in their country to drag us into a war like bin Laden did. If that doesn't work anymore, they're gonna be like, oh, I guess we got to pick on somebody else because these guys aren't playing around anymore. So, again, right at the end of our meddling, I could see a little bit. After a while, that's gone because again, but we have to stick to it. We can't do what we're doing and pretend we're going to play patty cake for a while and then come out of left field and smash them in the face with a brick like we've been doing. Because that's just human nature. You're going to have leaders who hold a grudge for a while until they cannot show any proof that the United States is meddling anymore. And then the people are like, dude, they haven't done anything. What are you talking about? And we just have to prove that we're not doing it.
I don't think it would be that hard or take that long. Like, if we pulled our troops out of a lot of areas and dropped the sanctions on a lot of countries, I genuinely don't even understand that. Because of our history, like you said, there might be it would be such a short period. Because if you had a good, vocal, diplomatic leader who could go to these other countries and explain to them like a reasonable thought process on diplomacy, like, you guys want this, we want this, we're coming to a middle ground here. Like, if you had someone who was willing to go to the other countries, negotiate with them or in that region and come up with deals, that's not the hard sell. It's really not. Like, again, with the Houthis were probably part of the groups chanting death to America. And then the second we were like, hey, we'll quit bombing you, you quit bombing us. And they were like, cool. Again, that is proof positive right there that if you just simply agree to stop bombing somebody, that they might stop bombing you. There's a bunch of examples. Like, we left Afghanistan. There hasn't been a Taliban attack on Americans. There hasn't been. We left. They quit attacking. End of story. Like, I'm not saying that every time it's going to work perfectly like that. Like, you're right. There could be still some potential blowback for the horrible history of American foreign policy. But I think with a good diplomatic leader, you're not really going to see it.
Now, that begs the question, right? Because you bring up an interesting point. Because what I fear is some of the leadership that we've installed that we think we try to sell as moral, that they're not moral. They're pretty immoral people. Here's my question, though. Let's say we do that, right? We pull our troops off the bases. We're like, we're bringing them all home. We're going to defend our nation. And then we say, because we've got so many countries dependent on the U.S. dollar, what do you think happens? I'm not saying all of them. I think you might have a couple leaders who get pretty mad when you say, oh, by the way, the money well's dried up too. You're going to have to fend it. So we prop them up. We do a regime change. We prop them up. We bribe them with money. And let's say we pull the troops and we say, no more money. Now, I'm not saying they'll attack us. I'm just saying that we're going to have some angry people if we pull all the way out and act like we should be acting. Some of those complete jackasses that we've decided we're better than the last guy, who are actually just as bad or worse, that we've been propping up and bribing. Once we stop bribing them, I could see that. Now, again, I'm not saying full-scale attack or an attack on Americans, but I can see the propaganda from those few leaders, like inflaming people for a little while. But again, if we don't do anything and we don't even visit, if we just say, hey, you know what? We left. You're on your own. I'm not even going to come over there and talk to you right now because we're not going to get anything accomplished. And we don't even show up on their doorstep anymore. It'll calm down real quick.
Well, you don't.
We have to be completely hands off.
It's not even what's. I don't even necessarily know if that's 100% true, because what I think more likely what would happen is you would have our government stopping relations with their dictators or government. Worst case scenario, the other country or government who was getting our bribes would set up some sort of false flag attack on like an embassy to try to draw us back in and make us send more money that way. But I think what you would see is once the internal politics of a country cool off. So like if we were propping up a dictator and that dictator falls, then all you have to do, and again, I could be wrong on this, but my theory on it is if you give them enough time and allow private industry to move its way in, then either that country is going to isolate itself and cut itself off from us. But then if we're not a threat to them, they're not going to be a threat to us, or they're going to want to trade. So then all we have to do is let American businesses trade. Like all the government would have to do is get out of the way, let us provide them with jobs or some sort of economic benefit between the two countries, especially countries that have minerals, especially countries with lots of natural resources. Then we just let private business conduct in that area. And if anything, they're going to become more friendly. Another good example is Vietnam. We left Vietnam in the hands of a communist country, and now we have a great trade relationship with Vietnam. No threats, no nothing. We left them alone, and now we have a great trade relationship with private businesses. That's the blue book. That's the blueprint. So, I mean, it can be done. I just think the government has to get out of the way and let private businesses do their thing. Like we don't see a bunch of Vietnamese blowback because we left.
No, but again, we have to be completely hands off. And I think you pull the troops, you pull pull the money, and you watch the reaction. Because again, I think there will be a couple, because honestly, to me, the only thing you can hope for is that the people respond and say, "All right, bro, we listened to you. That's not working anymore. You have to leave." You hope that you don't. Now, again, that's not us being attacked. I'm leaving us being attacked. I could see some violent upheavals in those countries. We would have some blame in that because we created those conditions. We propped up evil people, and then it blew up, and then the people revolt, and you possibly have a bloody revolution. If that all weighs out and the people become more free, that's freaking amazing. I do see not upheaval against us, just those countries will have to, unfortunately, needfully have to suffer through some hard times because of the people that we put in place. When the people, the dictators or whoever we put in place, when the people finally have enough, if there is a violent revolution, that's almost necessary in those times because let's face it, some of the people that we put in power, unless it's our government and handing them money and weapons, you can't have like generally good conversations with them because you made them dependent on you. So if you say, I'm going to yank everything away from you, some of them are going to throw a fit. That anger, yes, and I believe you're right. That anger will probably lead to false flag attacks to try to trick us into like, oh, I'm sorry, here's some more money to defend yourselves. If we go, that's on you. You need to figure this out. There will be some violent upheaval in those countries, not against us, but those people will have to suffer. And hopefully, they can look back on our actual history and say, hey, they did it and they had it pretty good. We need to do it too. But again, without us giving them money or the CIA going in and doing their little funky operations and paying them to start an uprising. It needs to be organic. I would love to see that. Nothing would, again, I don't want to see the human suffering part, but nothing would please me more in these countries like Syria and Libya for people to go, hey, we kind of like that liberty thing that you guys had 200 years ago before you went cross-eyed and got drunk on power and money. We like that thing you did at the beginning. We're going to do that. The only thing is, and I'm just getting philosophical here, is, and again, I agree with you 100%. Pull out and let it rip, right? The thing is, those people have to want better education. They have to want to not listen to, there are a few extremist leaders out there that want to, they're kind of like our leaders. They want to control everything. And their culture has to change. They have to have a culture change. They have to have the understanding like this is what true freedom is. And it's hard for a lot of those people to understand what true freedom is, especially in places that we've been meddling in, because they've never seen it their whole lives. Now, that's not an excuse for us to do what we're doing. I'm just saying it's going to be a hard lesson for those folks to figure out what real freedom looks like. It's going to be another grand experiment because culturally, they've just been raised. That's not the way it is. They've been raised this whole time that these ayatollahs or these religious leaders they put in place and like, this is how we're supposed to live. And if you talk back, then, we'll behead you or stone you because you broke sacred laws. But again, that's on them. I don't want us, our intelligence agencies or anything, to go in there other than ship them books on how to be free and say, educate yourself, folks. This is what freedom really looks like. You're not going to get that from an intelligence agency in the U.S. It would have to be like Scott Horton's bookstore in Austin, Texas, like mass printing a liberty like literature and then shipping it over there to their country. But that's the other problem. That's why I feel bad. Their culture for decades has not been, even if we weren't there, and I don't want us to be, their culture and their leadership has not been very freedom oriented. And it sucks for them. But it doesn't give us an excuse to say this guy's better than this guy when they're clearly not. And we just continue the human suffering. It sucks.
Well, if you think about any conflict that happens between two countries around the world that don't involve the U.S., we'll rarely even talk about them on this show. For example, India versus Pakistan. We don't have a dog in that fight. Sure, we give some money to both countries, but we're not locked at the finger. They're not. We would never consider either one of them a close ally, especially militarily. And they're just sure, if they want to fight it out, yeah, sure. America leaving a bunch of places isn't going to fix the world's problems either. But it's just none of our business. Right. Then we can take all of our tax dollars and start doing great things instead of terrible things with them.
Yeah, giving it back to people or stop taking it from them altogether. Right.
So yeah, like you were saying, America's military industrial complex being scaled back to an appropriate level it's not going to make everything hunky dory overnight, but it will make us safer. And I don't even necessarily, it doesn't even have to do anything. Forget all of the money, forget all of the other stuff. We will be a safer country not meddling in all of these foreign affairs. And I just seeing all of these pundits argue for this over and over again as if history doesn't exist is just, it's getting me so worked up. I can't, I've been telling all of my younger friends, I'm like, if they institute the draft, you guys are safe at my house. I'm going to be the Harriet Tubman of draft dodging. If the United States gets serious and but again, we're never going to actually institute a draft. We would leave before we instituted a draft in a place like Iran. So I'm not really worried about that, but it's just incredible the way so many people are cheering for Americans to support this foreign conflict, all of the foreign conflicts, because even the people who don't support Israel, they support Ukraine and they support the military industrial complex one way or another. So 6-1. That's, again, really quick. One of my final notes because I know we're getting really, really low on time here, but one of my final notes is the hilarity of the No Kings protest is, first of all, it was a bunch of boomers. Like, from a bunch of the clips that I seen, I'm sure there were some young people there, but I seen a bunch of clips of just like old white people out there yelling about how they don't want a king, wearing their mask. I'm like, dude, you're such a phony. Nobody who's against the king, like all of these people who were out there protesting, I guarantee they supported lockdowns. They supported forced mandated vaccines. Like, they supported all of the things a king would support. They just don't like the guy in charge doing it right now. Like, all of the Democrats who came out for the No Kings, you're ridiculous. You're ridiculous. Go home.
Yeah, that is the main thing out of this whole ordeal was you all were okay with lockdowns and vaccine mandates and everything else, and now suddenly you don't want a king. No, you just want your king. You don't want the other king. You want the king of your party that you support. You don't want a king from another party. So you should say, your signage should say no king but ours, but not no kings. It should just say no kings but ours, the ones
Only
we
Democrat
like.
kings.
Right. That's what they're signing. If you want truth in advertising, those nitwits, that's what they should have said. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Again, thanks to all of you who watch on YouTube, on Rumble, Facebook, listen by podcast, or at molibertyradio.us. Your continued support and viewership and listenership is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, we'll see y'all next week, Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. right here on the Missouri Liberty Report.